Next up, I want to invite Shelley Specchio, who is going to be our moderator for our panel on home ownership. There's a lot of opportunities in home ownership related to innovation. Shelley is the former director for CMLS and current chief executive officer for MyBoard. So please come on up and bring your panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. That was great. And I'm very excited to get to be here today to talk with you all about an important topic. I think another important topic, we're calling it Dismantling the Barriers to Home Ownership. So some of you are thinking, that's a very association-sounding title. And some of you know that I come from running a regional MLS and have now gone to Indianapolis, where I am the CEO of MyBoard Realtor Association and the Broker Listing Cooperative. And so you're thinking, those of you who know me, oh, see, I knew it. She's moved over to that association-y side, and she's going to come out here and pitch advocacy and economic development and all these association-y sounding things. And that's, Shelley, don't you remember this is the Council of MLSs? We're about business and MLS and data. So I didn't forget. I think this is an opportunity to really talk about some important issues that, for me, through this transition, I really learned a lot. I'm going to tell you a quick little story about Reno, Nevada, which is the love of my life. Woohoo! It's the Reno people, my hometown. And I don't know if you know, but Reno, Nevada was able to have Tesla come to open up, what is it? It's like 10 buildings that are 10-acre roof size apiece or something. It's huge. It was a huge get for Reno, Nevada to get the Tesla power plants. What I know now is that the MLS had nothing to do with that. I'm sure our association has something to do with that, but nobody ever called the MLS and said, hey, could you provide some housing data for the economic development of Western Nevada organization that was pitching Tesla to try to get them to come to our area. It was a huge get for the city, and I didn't have anything to do with it, and I'm sure there was some housing data, but I'm not sure exactly where they got it. That's terrible, because now I know, having gone to MyBoard in Indianapolis, who has big conversations. Yeah, there we go. Let's hear it for Indianapolis, too. They've had huge conversations with economic development. They sponsor luncheons where all the mayors come together and talk about the community coming together. And all of that is fueled by data that comes out of our listing service. We're supplying all kinds of housing information when we're bringing companies into our marketplace so that they don't keep going after, for example, logistics companies when it turns out that they don't have any inventory of housing that the people who work in logistic companies could actually afford to buy. So it's those kinds of conversations. So this is where I think the MLS industry, we really need to have this conversation. So I'm so lucky to be joined up here on stage by 3 people who are going to help us have this conversation all about dismantling these barriers to home ownership and how MLSs can help move this discussion forward. Not just associations, but maybe through your associations. So please come on up and join me. We have Rob Crane from Down Payment Resources. He's the CEO. We have Peter Rivera. He's a broker with Remax Palm Realty here in Orlando. And Raquel Russell from Zillow. She's the Vice President of Government Relations and Public Affairs for Zillow Group. So thanks you guys for joining me. So first of all, I thought we would start with talking about, first of all, what are the barriers to home ownership that we want to talk about? So Rob, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Thanks for the easy question. Because it's the obvious answer is down payment. That's what consumers tell us. But there's actually an important subtext to that, and that's a lack of awareness. And there are tons of renters who are mortgage ready today, and they don't think they are. There's a disconnect between what they think they need for a down payment and what they really need.
So down payments is a barrier. Peter, I bet you've got some. Your boots on the ground, actually serving clients every day. What are you seeing as the barrier to home ownership?
Lots of experience with first-time home buyers and buyers coming back. Barrier like down payment is a big thing. You might have somebody who has the credit and the income, but not the down payment. And a lot of our millennials are looking to buy, and a lot of them have student loans. You know, they're getting in the way, debt, that sort of thing. So those are barriers that we're seeing in our local market, and inventory.
And inventory. Those are good. How about Raquel? What barriers do you see?
So and I think that folks here know that we just published today our 2018 Consumer Housing Trends Report. And one of the things that we have seen is that when Peter talked about first-time home buyers. So just one data point that came out of our Consumer Housing Trends Report is that 60% of first-time home buyers put down less than 20%, while only 42% of repeat buyers put down less than 20%. So you already see that disparity between first-time home buyers and repeat buyers when it comes to down payment and how they're able to save for down payments. A huge part of that, especially for first-time home buyers, is the fact that they are currently renters. And in most of our markets here in the US right now, we are experiencing a rental affordability crisis. And that crisis is, most economists will tell you that you shouldn't spend more than 30% of your income on your rent, or your mortgage for that matter. And in a lot of markets, what you see is that many, many, many Americans and many households have to spend significantly more than 30% of their income on their rent. One other data point from the Consumer Housing Trends Report is the fact that 52% of renters say that if they had an unexpected event that cost $1,000, they wouldn't be able to do that. They just don't have that kind of savings. If they don't have the savings for $1,000, they certainly don't have the savings for a down payment.
For a down payment, that's right. And Rob, you were just part of a sponsor, I think, for the Urban Institute, a big study that did it come out just Thursday? It's
Just
right off
Thursday.
the presses. So that had some information, I think, along these same lines. So tell us a little bit about what you learned through that study.
Yeah. We were sitting around one day. We were in a meeting with Freddie Mac, good partners of ours, and we were saying, would it be nice if we could just figure out how many renters are mortgage ready today? And they said, one guy reached out and said, oh, we could tell you that. And they had a report. It's like, wow. And then we said, well, what if we asked this, this, and this? And so this report that we sponsored with Freddie Mac, we wanted an independent third-party organization who was fiercely independent to do the research. And I think you'll see a slide later where to find the report. I really recommend it because it's just got so much good data in there. But the headline stuff is that we looked at 31 large metro areas, looked at renters 40 years and under, and there were like 22 million renters in those 31 metro areas that are mortgage ready today. And of those, and this is a more important point really, 88%, so roughly 18 million, are not only mortgage ready, but they have the income to afford a median priced home in their area. So back to what I was talking about a minute ago, what creates such a great opportunity for the real estate business is consumers don't know. A lot of them are mortgage ready and they don't know about it. And there's tons of programs out there, over 2,500 programs across the country to help them with down payment and closing costs and other ways to get into home ownership. And so the opportunity in the real estate industry is to inform them because they don't know. And how many pieces of unique information are there to message to people these days after, since the advent of the internet? So
That's good information. So Peter, you're out there selling these homes to these people who may be mortgage ready and you're trying to get them into homes and you're getting them to these down payment.
Yeah, actually we've had a lot of success with tapping into that market. There is pent-up demand within that group, which we just heard that is not aware that they can buy. And actually the down payment resource is something that the MFR MLS offers to our members and helps make it very concise to give that to the customer. And for example, actually just before I came here, I talked to one of my agents who really has driven into this. He's done 15 sales just this year from first-time home buyers who had maybe $2,000 or $3,000 in the bank that used the Florida DPA program to purchase their property. Wow. So these are people who have income, they have education, they can purchase, but they're not, like you said, they're not aware of it. And this is a great opportunity for us as agents and brokers to get out there and educate them and unlock. We're going to wind up unlocking a lot of demand and potential buyers there.
So I have a follow-up question to that.
Mm-hmm.
You told me when we were backstage, so I already know a little bit, that there are actually building affordable houses around median price. But
Yes.
I know that some of the markets in this room, probably they're asking their vendors to create them a new metric in their systems of hours on market instead of days on market, right? Especially for anything that's below median price.
Yes.
So does having to use these programs just slow up that deal if inventory is moving so fast? How are we even getting them in?
Well, that's on the demand side of things. And I'm speaking from my experience from my market, which is Southwest Florida, to give everyone here some context. We have an affordable market, but it's getting less affordable. And builders, on the demand side of things, builders have recognized that there's an opportunity there. They've started to do that. And we have some builders in our market, like Wade Journey Homes, that have built homes that are under $200,000. And a lot of these homes, and the nice thing we've taken steps within the MFR MLS where in the builder resource you can find these properties easily. Because a lot of them are in construction. They're not necessarily listed yet. So they're a little bit harder to find, but it's there. And there's competition, but the demand is starting to come to follow it with the opportunity.
That's
And I think part of that demand is around the awareness that Rob spoke about. You know, I think that in a lot of markets where it is actually cheaper to own than it is to rent. There's a lot of markets where that's the case. But for a lot of first-time home buyers who've never had the experience and don't know what it would take and how they would actually jump over that hurdle of becoming a homeowner and are concerned about the mortgage, don't realize the programs that could be there for them. And I think what you're seeing a lot in that demand is, there was a time a few years ago where people were like, oh, millennials don't want to buy. And it wasn't that they didn't want to buy. I think that they maybe delayed it for different reasons. And I think a couple of reasons include the fact that millennials, and so the reason why I'm really focusing on millennials is they're the actual largest block of buyers right now in America, generationally that is. And, for them, it is about to Peter's point, they're educated, so they were probably in school longer. They're waiting longer to get married. They're waiting longer to have kids. All reasons that kind of prompt you into buying that first home of yours. But the other piece of that really is that down payment assistance piece and not realizing that they could do that. And so I think as the awareness comes and as they see the numbers and see how more effective financially it would be to buy than to rent, they start really thinking through and trying to get creative on how they become homeowners.
And so in addition to down payment, trying to help people get into homes that way, what are other things that that MLSs could be working on? I mean, we have this really rich data set. I know that what I bring to this conversation is that we're doing some studies in Indianapolis and sharing those out with all these the planners, the economic development entities, the mayors, to make them understand what the inventory looks like, what we actually have available versus what people can afford. Right. So talk to us a little bit, Raquel, about affordable, and we're calling it attainable.
Yeah, that's a great point, Shelley. And I think that one of the things, when I first started at Zillow 4 years ago, a huge part of my job, and it remains to be, is really partnering with elected officials, thought leaders, government officials around housing issues. As the years have passed, their questions have changed and have transformed, but affordability has definitely been the top of that list. But they've asked questions around, racial disparities, around access to mortgages, around down payments. And the federal government and federal officials are extremely interested in issues around housing affordability, but they don't have a lot of levers to pull. A lot of the levers around affordability are actually at that local and state level. And we at Zillow do partner sometimes with state elected officials and local elected officials, but the reality is that a lot of the data they want and need to be able to make the decisions they need to make as economic development planners, urban planners, whatever the case may be, really lies within their MLSs, right? Within that local communities. Our data gets granular, but not that granular. And so really, I think that's one way that MLSs can really provide some help and assistance as their government officials, their local government officials are really thinking through how they address affordability, how they incentivize affordable development, and things of that nature.
So important.
Well, yeah.
Please, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things we hear a lot, and I've heard it so many times, it's been beat down in my head so many times, I started to believe it. And that's that, market conditions, and the data doesn't lie. You can't argue that there are a lot of markets where inventory is low, especially entry-level inventory. So, how are you going to help a buyer with a down payment program get a contract, even get it accepted? And we attended an event in Seattle back in June. So, great example of rapidly appreciating market, affordability challenges.
I can personally attest to all of this. Because I am in
Yes.
Seattle. It's very,
Yeah,
very expensive.
I should let you tell the story. You're there. But anyway, so it was a perfect example that we hear is a reason why you can't do this. And at this event, one of the panels, there were 5 realtors from that market who were all actively and successfully selling homes with down payment assistance. And not only were they selling homes with down payment assistance, but a lot of these programs could be layered. And one of the agents there really took a lot of pride in being able to figure out how many programs she could layer for her customers. And her kind of personal record was actually in the pipeline at that point. 6 programs, 6
wow.
different programs. So yeah, maybe that's an outlier. You don't necessarily do that every day. But that starts to add up a lot of money. And that does make a big difference in affordability. The other thing was somebody said, well, homes are selling so quickly. How do you get an offer accepted? Well, they set expectations. They educate their buyers that, they're homes that are going to sell really quickly and all cash, and it's just not realistic. So we're going to look at homes that have been on the market a little while. And finally, somebody said, "Well, what do you mean by a little while? Like 6 months old or something?" And they said, "Like, no, 2 weeks or longer." And so there's a way to do it. I'm not saying it's easy. And the other thing is, of course, we all know markets change. Inventory goes up, it goes down. It's a buyer's market, it's a seller's market. So. It's like the weather. If you don't like it, wait a little while, it'll change.
One of the things we're working on is being able to really articulate what a healthy market looks like, how you balance, what is the balance of supply and demand, so that you can know sort of when you're in it. We all talk about absorption rates, right, is 5 months usually is a balanced market, but what are the indicators of healthy in these sorts of things with inventory? Tell us, Peter, a little bit more on this. I know you had some stories about actually working, some real stories of getting people going on some of these things and trying to find these houses. And
Sure. Actually, touching on that, how does an agent actually get an offer in when the market's hot? And really, a lot of agents, like the one I just used an example of, it's really in the presentation. You have to partner up with a good mortgage broker that understands the down payment assistance program. It's not a scary thing for the seller, really. A lot of times that person's pre-approved and they take it. In our market, it's hot. I mean, if it's priced well, it could be gone in 2 weeks. It could be gone in a weekend. So some of these people, if they're looking for a $160,000 house, their window of opportunity is very small. They got to come strong. They might go through 4 or 5 different properties to get there. But also tagging on to that, there are a lot of programs already out there for home buyers to overcome a lot of these obstacles. And I think really it's the information, getting the information to them, and for the MLS to get the information to the agent so they can give it to their customer in a concise fashion is really kind of where it's at. Because we have down payment assistance in Florida. You can get $7,500 down for your home. You would think that it's a interest-free loan, or it's actually a no-payment loan that's not due until the property sells, you pay off your mortgage. You would think that every single customer in Florida would be trying to do this, and they don't. And you would think that every agent out there is offering this, and they don't. And a lot of them don't know that it even exists. And in our MLS, I don't know if we have a lot of different MLSs here. In MFR MLS, we have a down payment resource here. You just hit a button and you can see everything for the property. I mean, some of these properties have 6 different programs, and you can just hand it to the customer. I would say that the problem is actually getting the customers to not get overwhelmed and the agents overwhelmed with how to navigate all this and get the help they need.
so you can. I want to not stay too long on just down payment because there's
Sure,
so
yeah.
much of
No,
other
sure.
stuff, but go ahead.
Peter made a great point about working closely with mortgage lender. Because sometimes what you hear, and it's understandable that real estate agent, broker doesn't want to be the lender. That's not their job. It's not their job to get into that. And that's absolutely true. But a real estate agent, nobody's better positioned to influence that. I mean, data shows, again, that realtors are the prime influencers of where people go to get their mortgage. So really all you need is to know that the programs are out there. You don't have to be a subject matter expert. Get good partnerships with lenders who do these programs. They'll do the hard part. So it's not about, it's really just about knowing. It's not about being an expert.
Right, so that's one of the best, a great tool that we can put in the hands of our members, of course. But let's talk about other things that MLS can be doing, because again, the idea is that we have stores of information and that we could be leveraging to really strengthen our communities and make the market work in addition and beyond the down payment itself. So Raquel, talk to us a little bit about, I mean, you had a lot of information in your studies too.
Yeah.
About what can MLSs do? What can we leverage? Who do we connect with? What do we do?
So how I'll try to answer that question kind of in the reverse of what elected officials have come to us asking for, right? And some of the data and research that we've been able to provide based on the requests that they were asking. So I'll start like actually even earlier, well before my time at Zillow Group, is, you know, we were having meetings in DC. It was right after the housing crisis, and the assumption was that like it's the U.S. government. They have all this information, but we, you know, kind of like in passing mentioned like, oh, we have this data, but you probably have this and much more. We didn't want to obviously seem presumptuous, and also they're the U.S. government, and they were in the midst of dealing with this housing crisis, and they didn't have a lot of that information, and it became very clear to us just the hunger and that elected officials had when it came to like having the right data, right? They want to make data-driven decisions. More recently than that, you know, the Housing and Urban Development, called HUD in DC, the federal agency that focuses on housing issues, came to us a few years back, and they basically said, we would love to do this, but we don't have the resources to do it. We would love for you to do some kind of research around racial disparities with mortgage access. And we took it up. We're like, okay, that sounds you know, great. Our economic research team dug in, and we were able to partner with HUD and produce a research document around those issues. And since then, we've looked at a lot of other issues when it comes to racial disparity, including the racial disparity in homeownership. And I bring this up, Shelley, because I think that this also speaks to, and I think we have to address, the barriers to homeownership. Oftentimes when we talk about, you know, the disparities in the U.S., we talk about income inequality. More so than income inequality, we have a huge wealth inequality issue here in the U.S. I mean, Peter talked about a lot of his clients being well educated, having the income, having the credit, but just not having the down payment. And a lot of that has to do with the racial disparity in homeownership, because the majority of Americans actually build their wealth through homeownership. And so when you look at generational wealth that's passed down from generation to generation, a lot of that began in homeownership. And there is a disparity with Blacks and Hispanics when it comes to their ability in the past to have been homeowners. We've done research showing that a lot of millennials, you know, we talk about down payment assistance programs. We did research to show that a lot of millennials go to the bank of mom and dad to help get, you know, assistance for down payments. That's not necessarily always applicable for those whose parents weren't able to be homeowners themselves. So, you know, looking at that is one of the things that we have looked at and done research around when we think about barriers to homeownership. But it was something that was born out of a request coming from a federal agency in DC asking us to do some research in that area. So I think, again, you know, when we feel the obligation and feel like it's part of our responsibility to be able to provide that information, not just for consumers, but also providing information to those making the decisions that are impacting the consumers. And if we have that information and can help and support the elected officials and the policymakers, we want to be able to do that. And so I think that, you know, at the local level, there's an opportunity there as well.
I agree. I was at a different conference that was not like my people. It was not MLS people. There were no realtors there. It was lending, and someone on the stage who was a big official from a GSE said that the inventory and the attainability of housing is a big factor in the United States, and they would hate to have to put a supply side policy, national supply side policy in place, because really it had to be solved at the local level.
Absolutely.
And I think that was the moment that I thought we need to have this conversation, and I wanted to encourage all my MLS exec friends out there to say we have to solve these problems at the local level. If you're having inventory problems because the right things aren't being built, or the planning departments are not approving the kind of homes that the community actually wants to buy, that's time to engage and be a part of that conversation. So if it's through sending this great rich data that we have through to our associations, if they're the right contact, if you are the contact, leverage the data and start the conversation.
And I would just say something that you said, Shelley, at the beginning. This isn't about advocacy, right? It really is just about information and providing the information to those who can make the decisions. We don't think about, when we do partnerships around thought leadership, as advocacy. We're not taking positions per se, but we want to provide that information and that data to the policymakers.
I love that. Great. That's great. And so down payment tools, information tools, what am I missing that we want to make sure that these guys take away from this conversation? Anybody? Peter?
Well, you know, we're talking about down payment. That goes hand in hand with a mortgage broker, with credit, solving those problems. You know, giving the tool to the agent to problem solve. If I can tell that quick story real quick, there was a specific story about this. I had a friend who actually, millennial group. You know, she's a little younger than me. She's a single mother. She had 2 kids. She had a 6-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter. And she just became an electrician. And she was excited about this and told me, hey, I'm making this money. And I said, hey, you could buy a house. And she said, well, I can't. I'm going to have to wait 7 years to save up the money at this rate. And I said, well, I hit the button, printed out the program again, down payment. I'm an advocate for that. It works. Gave it to her. She went home, came back. She's pre-approved. And we went to our rental inventory. And a home that we had rented for $1,400 a month, the tenant was being evicted. And the guy said, hey, listen, I want to sell my home. And I told him the situation with this customer. He said, well, I want to help out. So he said, I'll take her offer. And he took the offer. It closed in 30 days with the Florida DPA. She came out of pocket $300, and her payment is under $900 a month. Her son, at her inspection, her son picked out his room. He's never had a bedroom before of his own. That was his first bedroom. And he was so excited. And this is about 2 years ago. So fast forward to where they are today, her payments are less than $900 a month. She's getting married. She's needed to upgrade her home. The home was $150 at the time. It's $190 now. So this is a family that didn't have a lot of wealth. And within 2 years, have equity, savings, and it's just a fantastic story.
And a home that rented for $1,400.
And a home that rented for $1,400 a month.
Yeah, with her mortgage now being under
That's
9.
why we do it, right? I think that's why we're in this business, to see those kinds of stories. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you all for being a part of this panel. I think up on the screens you see that's a link to the Urban Institute report that you referenced. Earlier, Kurt Beardsley gave us the link to get to your new consumer report. We'll have a report, but it'll be very specific to Indianapolis. And Peter, I don't think you have any reports, but we want to make
I
sure
can make one.
you'll have lots of great slides with some really good information on it. So thank you all very much for being a part of this. And thank you for listening.